Hi everybody, thanks for the invite. It's good to be able to get in front of you. One of the difficulties that we had with Hockey New South Wales is getting the message out. Obviously being geographically challenged, and that's not going to change unless somebody does reduce the size of the state. But it's really important on these occasions that we have the opportunity to be able to make sure we get the message out so therefore there's not confusion in the marketplace. Just want to talk a little bit about player development in 2013 and obviously 2014. When I came into this position, how long ago, Tony? 10 months? It's not a lot longer than that. I inherited a development plan to put 800 people, or 800 athletes, should I say, through a development program. I'm not quite sure where that came from. But when I spoke to most of you people back in February, the target for 2013 originally was 800 that we wanted to be able to put through. I revised that target by changing some of the roles and responsibilities of our player development and game development people within inside the organisation. And I came up with a figure which I projected, and most people told me we wouldn't be able to achieve it by the end of 2013 to be able to put through 1,450 athletes. So we did that, but we thought we'd keep on going, and as far as October 2013, including the under-18 participation thing that we've got running at the moment at CARPA this weekend. We've actually put 2,220 athletes through development programs, which is a credit to my staff and also the really effective volunteers that we've got out in the marketplace. In saying that, in October 2013 to date, I believe a huge part of taking this organisation forward from a playing perspective is to be able to make sure that we're developing coaches. And realistically, I feel as though that when I talk about the RCC in a moment, one of the major contributing factors of the RCC network to the business is to be able to make sure that we've got coaches that we're developing, so therefore the information can get delivered down to the grassroots level and also to our players and club association players. That's always a difficult job in New South Wales, as it probably is in Queensland, because as I said, we're a long way away. And the way that hockey is played at the league level is very significantly different in most occasions to what I see in the region. That's not meant to be detrimental. I'm very, very proud coming from a town of 500 people, but I just know how different hockey is out in the regions compared to what it is at AHA level. For 2014, we don't hope we will put 2,910 athletes through development programs, and that's not high performance development programs. That's about what I call participation programs. So I find it difficult to find a name to put on these athletes, because when I look at the business from a business perspective, I see three categories. I see people or athletes what I call recruitment, being able to get people into the game, which is obviously essential. I think Greg came into the office a couple of weeks ago and we had a discussion, and he's done some auditing on the fact that we've got over $40 million worth of renewable resource out in the marketplace that we need to be able to make sure that we not only maintain, but we also regenerate. And that's an enormous responsibility to us all, and obviously from a game and player perspective, it's an enormous responsibility to me, because the most effective way of being able to fund that development or fund that regeneration is to be able to make sure that we're bringing people into the game. The other end of that is what we call high performance. And high performance are the athletes that, from a Hockey New South Wales perspective, we categorise as what we call either Tier 1 or Tier 2. And for those people that may not be aware, Tier 1 or Tier 2 athletes, as far as we're concerned, are people that play in our number one state side, or what we call our New South Wales Blues. The reason why we've introduced the New South Wales Blues over the last 18 months is to be able to make sure that we're providing more opportunity for our kids to be able to make sure they've got more incentive to stay in the game. But the third group, I think, are often untouched, and I think sometimes, without being rude, I think they're sometimes unloved. And they're the people that realistically play the game. They're probably never going to be world champions, although if they practice hard enough and get the right advice, who knows. But they're the people that I call the club player. I don't mean to be detrimental about that. They're the people that mob up every Saturday to your association, mob up every Saturday to your club, and play because they just love it. And I think one of the areas that Hockey New South Wales has got a major focus on is being able to make sure that we get to those players. because number one, we have to keep them going, and we do lose a lot. But we also they deserve the opportunity of being able to become better, to be able to learn techniques which realistically make it easier to drive the car down the street. And part of the RCC, or a big part of the RCC from my point of view, is being able to make sure we provide that function, provide that service. So therefore we have high players that are better players, that enjoy the game more. And those 15-year-olds and another 5 years are going to be the core of your first grade teams in your association. And as a result, if we can get to those people, if we can get to those athletes, if we can develop them, we're going to end up with a much stronger organisation from a playing point of view, and hopefully a business point of view in the next 5 or 6 years. So that's been an increase of 2,010 athletes over 2013 from our original projection of 800 athletes. As been mentioned a few times here this morning, we've got an initiative that I think is probably the most significant thing that Hockey New South Wales from a coaching point of view has ever done. It would have been easy to sit back and not do it. And with every change, there's always some difficulties that you need to overcome. I'm sure in 2014 there will be challenges that we need to be able to make sure that we answer to be able to make sure that the RCC network is effective. Coming from a business background over the last 26 years and having the fortune of being able to deal with many of Australia's top 100 companies and coming from a sporting background, I know that at the end of the day, I mean, you can have initiatives, but at the end of the day, it's the effectiveness that counts. No point putting in place something that's not going to work. I've been quite critical, I suppose, and please don't be offended by this, of the GDO network that's been in operation throughout New South Wales, because I don't feel as though there's been a degree of accountability. I don't feel as though there's been a strategic focus on those roles. Talking to associations, many of those associations haven't been completely happy. There have been some that have been, which is great. And what the RCC role is about making sure that we provide a framework, provide an opportunity to be able to make sure that we grow the associations. But it's a partnership. Hockey New South Wales can't do it. We can't tell you that you have to do it. As far as I know, we can't know it. It's a partnership. It's about working together to be able to make sure that we put what I call a non-nonsense program into place, which is going to impact on the business in a way that's going to take it going forward. So therefore you and me and everybody there, we're all here for the same reason. We might not think about it like this, but we need to leave a legacy. A legacy of the game. I believe that we need to be able to leave the game in much better shape than what we found it. And I'm huge on that. That's one of my fundamental beliefs. Why? To develop the game of hockey throughout the regions and assist associations grow. Everybody here loves hockey. And I can guarantee you do, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. Everybody here's been in hockey for a hell of a long time, probably most of their life. You wouldn't dare, and your partner wouldn't anyhow, although she might, count up how many hours you spend walking around a hockey field and not getting paid for it. Everybody here is in exactly the same boat. Everybody here is in this game because we want to make it better tomorrow than what it is today. And the people that have been in those seats before you and been in those seats before those people there, our directors, have all had that same passion. We haven't all agreed on everything, which is okay, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with debate. But pretty much we've all had the same focus to be able to make the game better than what it ever has been before from an association and Hockey New South Wales perspective. What do the RCCs do? And I'm in trouble because I need to know my work because I don't have the glasses. We want to be able to provide a framework to be able to develop young kids throughout the entire length and breadth of Hockey New South Wales. We've got a strategic focus on being able to provide resource and expertise with very efficient, effective people that have been through very demanding accreditation programs to be able to provide opportunities for under 10s and under 12 players throughout your association. For me, I feel as though this is absolutely essential because if we can instill the practices from a hockey perspective core skills, understanding the game, at this young age is going to make it so much easier for us to be able to keep those people in the game because it's going to be a bit more enjoyable. But also, if you want to look at the high performance end, in another 10 years, it's going to benefit us from an Arrows and a Waratahs perspective. I believe that one of the struggles that hockey's always had is being able to make sure that we are effective in the school system. It's always going to be a challenge. And when you look at hockey in general in New South Wales and think of the people that have been really effective in growing the game in the associations, it's probably by no surprise that many of those people have come from a teaching background. And I can think of examples when I was coming through as a junior. The associations that were often quite strong at state championships had teachers that loved hockey. The education system's changed, and now we need to be able to make sure that we facilitate that by having a conduit inside those systems to be able to make sure that we take people out of that environment, to be able to bring them to our hockey field, but then importantly for the clubs to be able to make sure that they stay there. Another function is to be able to make sure that we're implementing hockey ed programs throughout the region. Now, hockey ed programs, for those that may not be fully familiar, include Booking to Hockey. They include coaching accreditation programs. In 2014, Jenna and I, our game development officer, coordinator, we put over 140 new level ones throughout the regions as far as coaches are concerned. We're now currently in a process of being able to make sure that we give them game education. So therefore we can actually implement level 2s into those same people, because the better quality of coach that we put out to the marketplace, the better we're going to be. Last weekend we had a level 2 coaching conference, and it's either 65 or 67 people that travelled from regional New South Wales, many that are here, or some that are here today, to do their level 2 and to improve their knowledge of the game. I'm not personally big on accreditation, I don't really care, but it's part of the system. What I'm about as coaching director is making sure that we've got the knowledge, that we've got the understanding of what we need to do. From a technical point of view, how to be able to outlet out the back 30 metres with 2, 3, 4 or 5, to be able to transfer the ball into the middle of the field and to be able to effectively transfer it through those middle 50 metres, elongate the strikers, get people into target positions so therefore we actually score goals. That's what I'm about. It's about making sure that we've got that knowledge that sometimes finds it difficult to get passed down through the system to the grassroots level. It's about the Association Rep Coaching Development Program, and I was just speaking to somebody in the toilet, as you do when you play hockey. And one of the issues that you've got, and one of the issues that I see, is that I feel as though that if we want to be able to make sure that from an association point of view, and we all do, want to be more successful at state championships, if we want our kids to be better, I feel as though that we need to put in an education process where we can get to the rep coaches in your association, in your clubs, and give them ongoing education knowledge, therefore we can improve their ability. And as I said before, I'm big on that. Umpires and officials, one of the things that I think that we need to acknowledge is that realistically we don't have enough umpires. Some would argue we don't have enough good ones. But I don't claim it, also don't have to say that. But we need to be able to make sure that we're developing the umpires, and I've got a motion that the board don't know about yet, and they'll probably argue with me about it, but it's about making sure that all our under-15 state players next year do a level 1 umpiring accreditation. I think that from a player's point of view, you learn a lot about playing the game. You learn a different respect about playing the game by doing a base level umpiring accreditation. And it's also a career path for some. There might be some of those players that may not feel as though that they can make it to their top, but might find another chosen avenue. I've got a very good mate in Perth that went to 5 Olympic Games and world's best umpire, and as a player he loved it, but he probably was never going to play for Australia. Association Junior Advisor Selector, one of the issues that we have in Hockey New South Wales that everybody here is aware of, because you probably all called me this year, is that hockey's a very, very difficult game as far as selecting teams are concerned. It's a very subjective opinion. What we've done to be able to try and increase the transparency, or one of the things that we've tried to do to increase the transparency of the model going into 2014 is, number one, we've tried to make sure that we have looked at the selector base, and we have looked at being able to make sure that we have got as much experience in that area. But we also need to be able to put it back onto you guys. We need to be able to rely on the associations to make sure that there's nobody coming through the system that isn't noticed. And part of the RCC role is to be able to make sure that we have got information, we've got a conduit, we've got a tracking system to be able to make sure that we've got an honest opinion where their integrity as a coach, as an independent business person or independent employee, is dependent on their advice to what they give the selectors. Not us, but the selectors that are picking those sides. Again, will it solve all the problems? No, it won't. But it's just another thing that is going to bring more transparency into the process. And there's many, many other things that we're actually going to be doing there as well. One of the charters that the board first gave me when I came on board was to be able to make sure that we looked at the regional academy system and got it right. And I thought that was going to be pretty easy. There's a couple of, well, there's not a couple, there's 3 academies that I think run very, very, very effectively. Very, very coincidentally, they've got very good hockey people in them, they've got very good coaches. And the other ones, varying degrees as far as their success level is concerned and their reputation amongst athletes in the marketplace. We've just gone through a complete transformation of the requirements of athletes that are in the academies. We've tried to work with the academies to be able to make sure that they're working with us. And largely we've been very, very successful in that endeavour this year. I see part of the RCC's role is to be able to make sure that we, again, have got somebody in the blue tracksuit being able to assist with that process. Not to run the programs, we never want to do that. From an RCC point of view, the one thing I've said to all of you as associations, the one thing that we need to be able to do is develop our volunteers, not get rid of them. Hockey will never ever survive if we have that attitude. And we've got a hockey, or AAP program, the Athlete Acceleration Program, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail in a moment. And of course there's indoor hockey development. It's about making sure that the associations that have a passion for indoor hockey have got more assistance in that area. And it's also for associations that don't play indoor hockey to be able to make sure they've got somebody that can assist in getting it going. So who decides what they do? Very, very simple. The association does. I think that's been a difficult message for me to be able to get out there, maybe it's my communication. But the association decides what the RCC does. So with associations that are part of a region, that are part of the RCC network, they pretty much, to be honest, purchase time. But it's not Hockey New South Wales, it's not me, it's not Tony, that tell the associations what this person does. It's about the consultation with the associations, making sure that, number one, the associations have got a strategic plan as far as developing the game in their region, developing the game in their association. And if they don't have a strategic plan, it's up to us to be able to sit down with them and say, well, where do you want to take the game in your association? This is where we're taking New South Wales. Where do we need to focus the energy to be able to make sure that there's high degrees of accountability and there's high degrees of effectiveness and high degrees of efficiency in what we're doing. So therefore, in 5 years' time, we're having a different conversation to what we're having today. Who's accountable? Number one, I am. I invented the thing, and I've got my head on the chocolate box, so I can guarantee if anybody that's played with me or against me, there's one thing I do like is accountability. And there'll be a monthly reporting system back to the association, and that monthly reporting system will have 2 components. It'll have the component of what exactly they have done for that association in the last month. And there'll also be a component which clearly identifies the strategic focus for that association in line with the association requirements for the next 30 days. I think one of the difficulties with the GDA system is that I don't think that degree of accountability ever existed. With some associations it may have, but with the ones that I had looked at, probably the exception of two associations, I don't think that was in existence. For me, that's absolutely essential. I can't afford, Hockey New South Wales, and certainly Tony can't afford, to have blue tracksuits out in the community not doing anything. It's not going to work for you, and it's definitely not going to work for us. And I can guarantee it won't work for the person that's employed. Just speaking about the employment, I mean, recruitment's gone out, and it's been quite interesting. The calibre of people that have actually applied for these jobs is quite extraordinary. I've had a Dutch international player apply, I've had a Pakistani captain apply, and I've had a South African international apply, as well as some very, very good candidates from Hockey New South Wales in our community. Our current challenges in 2014. We've got a lot of athletes that leave the sport at the age of 16 or 17, both boys and girls. And what's disappointing, apart from the fact that they leave the game, is that a lot of those athletes have been very, very successful junior athletes at an Australian level. Hockey New South Wales results over the last 11 years at under 21 and AHL level have been nowhere near in reflection of our success in the under 15s. So to give you some statistics off the top of my head, in the under 11s over the last, in the under 15s over the last 11 years, we've won 8 boys and we've won 10 girls Australian championships. Outstanding. That's transpired or transferred under 18 level in the same period of time, 4 under 18 girls and 3 under 18 boys. Over the same 11-year period, that's produced 1 under 21 boys and 1 under 21 girls championship over the same period. At AHL level, with the Arrows and the Waratahs, over that same 11-year period, that's given us 1 AHL trophy in men's and 1 AHL trophy in women's. Simply, we're doing something wrong. And one of the things we're doing wrong is we're letting these athletes go. We're letting them drift out of the system, and it's our responsibility to be able to make sure we're providing opportunity and education and knowledge and coaching to be able to keep them in the system, to keep the vision alive. There's a perception in the marketplace that if you're not in the ETS by the time you're 16, that you're not going to make it. I believe that perception to be a reality. And this isn't nothing about the ETS program being, nothing derogatory towards the ETS program. But one of the things that the AAP program has got, is we've got 120 16 to 18-year-old people in the most sophisticated high-performance program that's ever been put in to Hockey Australia, not Hockey New South Wales, ticked off by the high-performance director, Trish Erdley, as being the most prominent piece of coaching that we could possibly do to produce Olympic champions. And Tony and I had to jump through absolute hoops to be able to make sure that this program was accredited by Hockey Australia in line with what they call the Australian Winning Edge program, which is the Australian Sports Commission program, which is designed to produce Olympic champions and Olympic medalists. And currently in New South Wales, we have no program apart from ETS, which takes an intake of 20 boys and 20 girls on a yearly basis to be able to keep these people in the game. And as I said before, apart from this, we're also running under 18 participation things like we've got this weekend. And it's all new for us. We've got no experience in this. We've got no evidence. I wanted to put it on. I knew it was going to be a difficult time of year. Most of these girls and boys have probably just finished year 12. And I thought, first crack, very kindly the car goes to the synthetic surface for free. And I thought if we got 40, it'd be okay. If we got 60, it'd be even better. We've got 97 out there today. And these aren't high performance athletes. I mean, some may, but I don't think they are. They're people that love playing the game. And they're people that we need to be able to make sure that we're doing something for to keep them in the game. It's not all about high performance. So the AAP program, which is high performance, we want to be able to improve the results of New South Wales in lead level competition. To do that, we need to have a plan. It needs to be a thorough plan, and we need to have buy-in. We need to have a way of being able to deliver that business performance and be very deliberate about the way we do it. Be able to provide a large number of young people the opportunity of being able to make sure that they can realise their dream. You take the dream away, you take the vision away, I can guarantee you take the motivation away, you take the energy away, and the performance drops off. The one thing I do know about business psychology is to be able to make sure you keep the vision and you keep the picture as clear as what you possibly can, because that drives performance. And the AAP program is about making sure that we've got mechanisms to be able to keep that dream alive. So therefore, these athletes can improve, and these athletes can go on to aspire to maybe be better what we never thought they could do. Obviously, to do that, we need to be able to make sure we've got a program where we convert them from being elite hockey juniors into the real world, into the big world. And to be able to make sure we're successful under 21 and Arrows and Waratah players in the next 5, 6, 7 years. A big part of Hockey New South Wales is obviously trying to look at the way that we manage the expense of the parent. So when people say to me, well, how's the AAP program work? It's a specific decentralised program. On my estimates, it'll be less than 15% cost of the current ETS program to a regional parent to have their child in the program. And I've done the numbers very specifically. To provide the program in what I call an education and family-friendly environment. Don't forget, between the age of 16 and 18, we've got young people that all probably aspire to play for Australia, but the reality is that many won't. I feel as though it's our responsibility to be able to make sure that we've got a program that encourages education. That whilst they pursue their hockey, that we've got a mechanism to be able to make sure that we are keeping them in their education, they're achieving in those roles. So when I look at high performance programs, I'm not in favour of the blanket approach. I went through that myself with the OES. I'm in favour of looking at each individual athlete, regardless of who they are, working with them and their parents to be able to manage their workload, to be able to make sure they can fulfil their dreams and their aspirations and other things in life apart from hockey. And I had a lady on the phone yesterday that sort of said, well, you know, that's never happened before in New South Wales hockey. And I said, well, I don't know. I can't talk about what's happened before. All I can talk about is what's going to happen in the future. I think for us to be able to sustain the game, and I've got some real concerns about where hockey is at this point in time. I honestly don't feel, and I know Tony agrees with me because we talk about and we work on this project all the time, I don't feel as though we're doing enough at the grassroots level in the communities to be able to get people in the game. And I also don't feel as though we're doing enough to be able to make sure that we're keeping people in the game. In regional areas, and coming from the sticks as I do, you know, your top 18-year-olds don't normally stay at home. They either go to Sydney or somewhere else to either take up university or play hockey, and as a result you lose them out of your system. The AAP program is all about making sure that over time that we've got an opportunity to be able to improve the level of hockey in your local community by making sure that we're giving 120 athletes the education, the knowledge and the expertise to be able to go back into their home environment, regardless of where that is, play first grade on the weekend and change the way that hockey's played, because they are the future of your association. A few of those will go on to bigger and higher and better things. But it's a very, very effective way of being able to make sure that we continue to develop the standard of hockey with inside your association, inside your club. And we are currently working through the format with Hockey Australia. There's lots of components in the program that need to be part of the program for it to be part of the Australian winning edge, Australian Sports Commission structure of what they call an underpinning program. So an underpinning program is a program that fits within inside the Hockey Australia framework, which is designed specifically to produce, in the future, Australian medalists at Olympic Games. There's a core skill development program. In the boys, I feel as though that from a Hockey New South Wales perspective, we're pretty good. In the girls, I feel as though that we've got a fair way to go. Because I don't compare what we've got as far as athletes is concerned to what's available in other states. I prefer to compare them, if I'm going to compare them with anyone, to anybody, with what's available around the world. What's happening in Holland? What's happening in Argentina? And I know those people that have been to Argentina would agree to me that the core skills component of their young players is much, much higher than ours. The second part of the program, to me, is absolutely essential, and I feel as though it's something that we have really let slip. And that is to gain education or to gain knowledge. It's one thing to have core skills, but it's another thing to know exactly what you need to be able to do when you're out in the field. And I blame us for that because we've always wanted to play on synthetic surface. In the old days, when we'd have state training or when we'd have club training, you'd go out and train for 2 hours and then sit in the change room for another 2 hours and argue and whinge about who didn't do what. Because people are so time poor nowadays, that doesn't normally happen. People go onto the surface, they train for an hour, come off and go home. And as a result, I feel as though one of the things that has done inadvertently is it's prevented our current lot of young athletes from realistically knowing how to play the game. What's required? What are the principles of play? I get a little bit disappointed when I finish Arrow's training and I've been working with really good people that have been in the NSW program for 4 or 5 years, and they ring me up on the way home because they're too embarrassed to say in front of their other players that training tonight was a revelation, that they learned something that they had no idea about. From an egotistical point of view, you'd think it would make you feel good. From a coach's point of view, I find it disappointing. Because what I should be doing at Arrow's training and what Aaron Oman should be doing at Warrigal's training is reinforcing principles. Once athletes get to that level, they should pretty much know what you're talking about. It shouldn't be really that new to them. We've got a physiology component. And it's quite interesting, even with the Australian women at the moment, in the year 2000, they had a beep test score of 12.1, which was the average. They'd now got a beep test score of 12.2. When Adam Collins took over the side about 3 years ago, their average was only 11.7. So part of the program with the AAPs is to be able to make sure that we've got athletes in there that realise that hockey is a game that you need enormous strength, agility, speed and endurance. Most times you're on the field for 6 to 8 minutes and you're off for 3 to 4. We don't play 70 minutes anymore and we don't get the chance to walk. And a big part of this program is making sure that we prepare athletes so therefore when they get to the RIS, when they get to NSW, that they're not breaking down. You look at the statistics of injuries of young girls in particular that come from New South Wales into the elite level programs in Perth, and their bodies aren't prepared for what they need to do. And as part of this program, there's a responsibility to be able to make sure that we are giving those young athletes the best opportunity to develop their bodies sensibly, under expert tuition and scientific knowledge by external providers whilst they're in the program. It's about athlete personal management. As I said before, I've got a huge passion to make sure, and I say this at all the clinics, producing good human beings that have got multi-skills. And it's about making sure that we've got experts in the program where we can ensure that people are getting assistance in learning how to study. They're getting assistance in learning how to manage their time. And obviously they're getting assistance in becoming a better hockey player. And it's about personal development and performance, and it's about team dynamics and performance. It's about making sure that we're producing athletes that, even though they've got individual aspirations, like most of us did, that they recognise that there's things that they need to be able to do to perform and to be able to be an effective part of a team which is going to be successful. I find it no value whatsoever to produce an athlete that gets to the elite level that can't fit into the team. Because I can guarantee you, when it comes to the point again, when it comes to Olympic selection, you'll be overlooked. How are these athletes selected? And this is something that we haven't been able to publicise, which has caused us some pain. It's probably caused you some pain. Now we can. On the 15th and 16th of February, we've got a high performance development clinic for under 18s. And those athletes, those 60 athletes, 20 under 16s, 2014, 20 under 17s and 20 under 18s in both boys and girls will be selected from those environments. There will be objective testing, there will be subjective testing, there will be core skills and there will be gameplay. But on top of that, like we did last weekend, we'll have people like Simon Orchard, who made an enormous contribution to the Level 2 coaching conference that we had last week in Sydney. We'll have those athletes, and we're currently liaising on with Adam and with Charlie to be able to make sure that we've got as many of those Australian athletes that we do not have access to because they live on the other side of the country. That's a different story. To be able to make sure that they're not listening to old guys like me, that they've got it coming from people that they see play on TV. And I feel as though that's an essential part of this process. Athletes will, as I said, will need to qualify for the program, and more importantly than that, this program is about progression. It's about sensible progression, and it's about making sure that we've got a tracking system and an advice system for each one of these athletes, so therefore we can make sure that we're making incremental improvements in their performance. That they're not treated as one of 120, that they're treated as one individual where we need to be able to, from a physiology point of view, from a game perspective, from a core skill perspective, look at each one of those athletes and say, this is where you're at, which is fantastic, this is where we need to get to, and maybe this is what we need to do. As I said before, the program needs to tick the boxes. Whether Tony and I like it, which I do, so does Tony, the bottom line is this program has to conform to be an underpinning program. And it has to conform to the AWE, the Australian Winning Entry program that I've alluded to. And we have no choice in it. I have got a personal passion, and Tony will let me put it in this slide, so I'm going to say it, that our expectation on this program is going to exceed Australian Winning Entry. That we need to be able to sensibly drive this program, so therefore, whatever the standards are at this point in time, our aspirations are higher than that. I fundamentally believe in sport, the one mistake that a lot of people make is they compare themselves to other people. I think as an athlete, you should compare yourself to, number one, where you're at now, number two, where you want to get to, and number three, what you're presently doing to be able to make sure that happens. My view from a coaching director's point of view doesn't alter too much from that at all. It's about recognising where we're at now, major success at under 15 level, moderate success at under 18s, and unfortunately minimal success at the top level at AHL under 21s. And it's about developing a business strategy to be able to make sure that we've got a process in place which is going to deliver the outcomes that we want to be able to deliver in the next 5 years. That's what it's about. So I apologise to anybody that has heard murmurs. Now it's out. This is what we're doing. And Taylor and I, as well as the board, are completely focused on making sure that we deliver. We'll now take questions.
Pastor, all I want to say is thank you, Dr. Nassim, on the brilliant presentation, and even I can understand it.
Are there any questions about the RCC? This is a great opportunity for me to be able to get all you association presidents in the room, because I think, let's cut to the chase. One of the difficulties that we had in Hockey New South Wales is getting the message out there clearly and concisely. And if you've got any questions about the RCC, no matter what they are, you can throw darts at me, we'll have to take them. But I just want you to have a really clear understanding of where we're going and what we're doing. Agree.
Again, I agree, Ray. Great presentation, Buster. A couple of things I just want to make a comment on. Number one, I just want to understand your views. I understand the statute you've just produced from 15 through. What is the Hockey New South Wales position on the success of NSW? Because that is a specific program for those people in that elite category. If that's not producing success, there's a major area there that needs maybe to be addressed with NSW. And two other quick things I just want to mention. Number one, in the development programs, can we please ensure that what's put in that program also includes development of administrators? It is not in that program. From Sydney Hockey's point of view, the number one thing when we met with all the presidents midterm was the number one issue in hockey is getting volunteers to administer clubs and associations. So there needs to be programs around getting people in, not just mum and dad, so to speak, off the street to run clubs and associations. There's a huge liability issue there. The other thing is around the comment you made on accreditation, and I know your views on that, but I'm pretty big on accreditation in everything for the number one reason, risk management, insurance and being sued. So if you're not a coach accredited, you're not an official accredited, please understand, and I have been sued in sport, you must be accredited because insurance kicks in there. So that's the second point. The third thing I just want to mention is about... The other thing is about... you've mentioned something about players when the rep players getting understanding of the rules. That's already been... some discussions have already been held in our local association around that every year, similar to a driving test, and when people go on to register, there's 25 questions on pretty simple rules. If you can't pass the rules test, you don't get registered, and that'll overcome some of the things. So I'd like to hear your views on the NSW thing, because that's pretty much important.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And I agree with a lot of that too, especially with the accreditation part. Don't get me wrong, I think accreditation is essential, but the component of accreditation that I like is the knowledge that people actually get out of it. From a selfish point of view, it also provides a great conduit for us. Tony spoke about the occasional coverage. To be honest, it wasn't our fault not being able to get up earlier. It was a technical thing that Joel would be able to answer. I can't even turn on the phone. But it allows us to be able to get education out into the community, no matter where we are, no matter where you live, to be able to make sure that we've got up-to-date education going out to what I call domestic level. As far as the NSW organisation is concerned, they're not part of Hockey New South Wales. From a personal point of view, what I see their charter is to train and coach nationally identified Hockey New South Wales athletes. I know Trini very well, and she's done a wonderful job since she's been in that role for Hockey New South Wales. But Trini said last week when we had level 2, as other people that were here would verify, that her job is not to win pennants or to win AHLs or to win Australian Championships hockey New South Wales. That's not her job. Her job is simply to look after the athletes that the Australian selectors have picked, whether we agree with those athletes they picked or not, to be able to produce a result. I can't do anything to change that. So my focus, believe it or not, isn't there. It's about what we're doing. It's about what we're doing in our organisation to look after our people. And I get really disappointed when parents ring me up and through the conversation they admit that it's more important to athletes, it's more important to parents that their child or young person is in NSW as opposed to a hockey New South Wales team. I don't agree with that. What this program is about, as well as everything else that Tony and I do at Hockey New South Wales, is taking ownership back. And I know that sounds like fighting words, but it's about making sure that we've got a mechanism where the association, what I call the hockey community of New South Wales, takes responsibility for developing athletes and takes responsibility for our own results. So I don't know whether that's answered your question, Greg, but we probably share similar views, and I really can't comment, probably without incrimination, on what they do at NSW because that's a program completely out of what we've got any control over. I've got probably slightly different views than some others, but I do know that at the end of the day, I want athletes out there that want to play for New South Wales. That's what I want. You know, I could brag on what I probably have been, but I can almost ask any athlete that's played for Australia and they come from New South Wales, tell me about the best tracksuit they've ever had. And it's normally something about a hockey New South Wales tracksuit. For me, it was when I was 11, I got picked in the under-14 to play at Finch's Pond. My under-14 tracksuit, you always remember it. And I feel as though, for our kids, that is still the focus, that is still the goal. But I unfortunately feel that when they get 17 or 18, all of a sudden, that doesn't have the same feel about it. And I know with the Arrows over the last couple of years, the one dynamic difference that we've made within the group is that there's enormous pride in playing for New South Wales. It's a prerequisite to being the team. That's what it's about.
Just a couple of questions, one going off the end of Greg's. What happens if a player is targeted for NSW and you want them in that AAP program? What's the priority for them? How are they choosing? If you're disregarding and thinking yours is a better program, that they've been targeted by Australia as an elite person that they want to see grow, what do?
They go to the NSW program. So, in saying that, don't forget this program here is what they call an underpinning program. So, in hockey terminology, Hockey Australia terminology, this is, tier 4, tier 5 players. Alright, so normally to get in NSW, you're a tier 3 player. You're higher, you're ranked higher. So this is what we call an underpinning program. So this program here, if you want to look at it from that perspective, from that pathway, this is a feeder program into the NSW program. This is a feeder program into the Australian selector system. It's an underpinning program. But yeah, you're right, there might be one or two athletes. I can give you an example. Probably somebody like Mariah Williams, when she gets back from her knee injuries, she would be an NSW accredited player. So therefore her priority would be to be in NSW, but we can still play a part in that because with our regional coaching structure, we've now got an environment where she doesn't have to travel to Sydney 3 or 4 times a week. That she can train in her home domain with a group of really talented athletes and be able to make sure that we become more user-friendly with her and her family.
My second question is, when will the RCC run? Particularly in Sydney, there is such a problem getting turf time. just by clubs using it for training and competitions? When will they be getting an opportunity for turf time?
Sorry, RCC or AMP?
RCC.
So the RCC works with the association. So they work with the association to be able to make sure that they're working on the KPIs of that association. So those KPIs might be game development, and that might be working with the individual clubs to be able to make sure that what they're doing at the grassroots level and how they're educating their coaches and how they're running the training sessions. So therefore, from an RCC's perspective, we aren't really looking for turf time. That's the consultation which occurs with the club or with the association in being able to target specific pockets of growth and development within inside that association. So it's not really the RCC's job to hypothetically go and hire the turf for 2 hours and then get everybody to come. It's about working with the associations to make sure that their projects have got a degree of expertise, don't get me wrong, not being rude, and a degree of focus, so therefore the outcomes are going to be achieved.
Same question on the AAP and turf time availability in Sydney.
So the AAP program in Sydney, like the ETS program, will run every week. We don't have the absolutely completed format of it, but I'm not really in favour of taking kids out of school 2 days in a row. I'm more in favour of being able to make sure that we've got what I call quality, not quantity. And my whole approach to developing athletes is to make sure that the quality of the work is the most important thing, not having kids running around for 12 hours a day unnecessarily to be able to get the outcome that you can do in 2 or 3 hours.
Sorry, I've got a follow-up question, sorry.
That's right.
As we got told today, obviously in the projected budget, we're going to have a portion now that gets contributed to the RCC. What happens to those associations that have already got development programs in place and don't require the assistance of the RCC? Each member has paid a small amount contributed to it. What happens to that small contribution? How does the association get benefit of that extra contribution when they don't need it? What are they doing with that?
That's a question for the finance department and for Tony, but in saying that, before Tony sort of answers that, my goal for the RCC program is to have very small regions right across New South Wales. And where I'd like to be able to grow this program, and I don't call next year a pilot year, I call next year the first stage of being able to develop a network. And where I'd like to see this program go is to be able to make sure that we've got few associations in each region with one really highly accredited active member to be able to make sure that we are growing those regions. And look, there are some associations that are doing a really good job, and I won't mention them, but there are a couple of associations that are doing fantastic work in developing the game, and obviously their numbers and the quality of the players they're producing is actually reflecting that. I admit that, which is great. I wish everybody was like that. But there are some associations, well, there are a lot of associations that either don't have that expertise or they don't have that infrastructure at this point in time that they need to build.
Sorry. You're basing on going back to the associations and putting a lot of pressure on the associations, particularly time on extra volunteers to help run this program. But are they going to be getting some of this funding to cover their time and setting up the program? Or is purely the money going straight to Hockey New South Wales for the benefit of running the information out of Hockey New South Wales but not to the association volunteer?
Number one, we're not putting pressure on volunteers to give up more time. It's about working with the volunteers that we've got. Every club here, every association here relies on volunteers, we all do. If you've got the view that the RCC is about taking more volunteer time, I've done a poor job of communicating, because it's the actual complete reverse of that. It's about making sure that our volunteers have got more expertise around them, so therefore they can be more effective. When I was doing trade conferences, I can't remember what association, they said, so do you want me to get rid of all the volunteers that we've worked so hard to not go on whack? You know, you've got the wrong message. My apology, I've obviously delivered it wrong. In fact, it's the complete reverse of that. It's about being able to make sure that the volunteers that we've got in our community that we value more being able to put a better structure around them, be able to assist them, so therefore they can coach the kids better, so therefore they can run their rep teams better, so therefore the association can achieve on certain levels. That's what it's about. It's not about, never ever think that the RCC is going to be able to go in and replace those volunteers. Number one, you wouldn't want to do that. Number two, we all love hockey and it's all about emotion. Number three, at the end of the day, hockey is never, ever going to have enough finance to be able to support a system like that.
Okay, Brady, that's actually a very good question in regard to the increase. Part of that, yeah, sure, Larry, as Larry said, a proportion of that funds the RCCs, but it also funds the AAP program. It's all about a 2.5% increase in insurance and also CPI. So that's bundled all into the increase. Just to clarify that point. And I think it's really important to know is what will be the result of doing nothing. If we didn't do the RCC, the AAP, where would the sport go? I think we all know the answer.
So the extra funding that you're asking associations to contribute to that, on top of what you're putting for the membership, that small portion, how is that reflecting on then the assistance, the assistance that the RCC are going to give to the associations? Well, I don't see giving 5,000 to 10,000. What is the difference? You say time, Buster, I understand that, the time that the RCC is going to contribute back to the association. But what information? So if the association pays 5,000, they only get like a little sample of everything compared to a 10,000?
So it's essentially buying time. So I mean, you know, so it's let's call it the base model. 5 associations all contribute $5,000, $25,000 per region, $25,000 per RCC. So what you're effectively doing is if you contribute $5,000, you're buying 20% of that person's time. 20% of that person's time in real terms means in a 12-month position, 11 months of the year, if you take out annual leave. For 11 months of the year, that you're getting 20% of a 38-hour week. That's what you're getting. So, you know, you've got somebody active in your community, hypothetically or realistically, one day every week on average.
Just talking to that, when you live in a region that is spread out,
Which is?
Western region,
Yeah.
a great deal of that time is spent travelling. So say Dubbers might contribute their 5,000, which is one day a week.
Yeah.
You know, from wherever this person lives, it's going to be a 2.5 hour trip there and back again. So that's like 5 hours a day. So essentially they're not going to get rid of 1 day a week.
Well, they are, and that's not how the model works. So when I had the consultation with the Western region, which they requested yesterday, I'll go through the exact process. I've done a 12-month format of every RCC in every region. I've got exact distances that they need to travel in relation to, depending on where they want to live. And I've also got a plan in place. So the way that I see it in short is that you wouldn't live in Bathurst and go to Dubbo one day, and you wouldn't live in Bathurst and go to Parks the next day, and then you wouldn't go to Lithgow. Number one, from a life balance point of view, you're going to burn out, you're only going to last 12 months, if that. Secondly, I wouldn't ask anybody to do that. The preferred model that I've got is that you work with the association and you work with what I call projects. And the project might be that you're running a project with Parks Association where you're really targeting the schools. And you might be working with, hypothetically, Lithgow, where you've got a project where in a particular week you're really focusing on rep coach development and also maybe their rep players. But that consultation is with the association. But what I don't see somebody on the road all the time. That's not going to work. In the budgeting figures that we've done, we've allowed for obviously travel, and we've obviously allowed for a certain amount of accommodation. And as I said, with each region, more than happy to go through that process of what I've organised. And again, it comes back to the association, what they want.
No, I'm just asking another question about the AHG program and the regional training sessions that you were told was there. Isn't the academy system? Like they're our top players playing in the academy or training in the academy anyway. So is that already?
The academies pretty much across the state. Some are a little bit different, but largely go from November through to middle of April. All right, they don't have active training and participation throughout the rest of the year. One of the things that I'm pretty big on is making sure that we don't burn athletes out. And I would prefer to have all our programs in Hockey New South Wales for a particular athlete be what I call bookended. Now, in some regions, especially your region, you've got a very good academy with excellent coaches in there. We need to be able to assist that program and take it over. In some other regions, the academies are really poor, so we need to be more active in the way that we manage the athletes in that region. But in saying that, no, most academies realistically have, they finish their training, usually by sort of the first month of the hockey season, and then they pick it up usually around about this time of year. So,
Just another thing about the PWFA and I'm sure you included the CHS in that. They're all things that have come into the RCC position, not in the initial stuff, but more recently. How does that sort of all work as well?
Gino, our game development officer, has been doing lots of consultation with the PWSA system. I feel as though it's an area that we need to embrace and not be afraid of, and we need to be able to be more active in that space. One of the difficulties that we've actually got in hockey is that I feel as though the age groups that we've got in Hockey Australia is wrong. And what I mean by that is that we work in odd numbers, 11s, 13s, 15s, 17s. When Greg and I came through, it was 14s, 16s, 18s, 12s. And when you really look at our education system, 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s would fit better. It would allow us to be able to have cross-pollinisation of the programs, to be able to make sure that we're working with the school system in a more effective way. So, for instance, under 11 would normally correlate with year 5. Under 12 correlates usually with year 6. Under 16 normally correlates with year 10. And obviously, under 18 normally correlates with year 12. So we're working because that actually causes us some real significant challenges in being able to get athletes that play in the school environment into our system. So I know for a fact in Sydney there's an enormous amount of young girls that actually play hockey in their school system that actually aren't registered with any club, any association. And we need to be able to make sure that we've got a funnel to be able to make sure that we have got a conduit to get those people inside the club system, so therefore we provide an opportunity for them.
We're here at a state AGM, not an association AGM, so we shouldn't be parochial. I can't think of any association in this state that would not benefit from your RCC program, no matter how good they think they are. Nobody's quite that good, and there's always room for improvement. And when it comes to finances, for God's sake, you don't get anything for nothing. And if people want to opt out and not pay, then why can't an association that doesn't have a member in a state team going to a national championship say, hey, you take that $2 out of my fee, please, because we're not sending anybody, why should we pay for anything else? Statewide, not parochial.
Sorry, I'll point the thing.
Sorry.
Bruce from Grafton.
Hey, Bruce.
Good morning. You probably think it's detrimental to Grafton that we're not going ahead this year or in the next 12 months.
That's a choice. It's a choice.
I know that. I do believe it's a good program, personally. We have a matter where we're in the process of a merger at the moment, and I'd like to know how long the commitment's meant for. You can just give me a base answer there.
Yeah, I mean, Tony and I have had lots of consultation about this. We realise that the business model itself is undergoing some change with association reform and other ventures that we're doing. So the approach that Tony and I have pretty much taken is that this is the inaugural year of the RCC. And originally, and being very specific and completely honest, we were entertaining the idea that this would be a 3-year commitment. What we'd really like to be able to do is, we'd like to be able to make this model so successful, and this is egotistical, so successful, that in 12 months' time, the associations that have elected not to be in this year are saying, I need to be in. So in answer to your question, Bruce, if you ask me what I'd love to be able to see in 2015, it's about saying to everybody here, okay, we've got some evidence that this has worked, and these are the areas that we've had to improve. These are the challenges that we've had, and now we've come up with these solutions. And if you all want in, we can change the way that we do things. If we want to be able to make sure that we have got the length and breadth of New South Wales covered, and if we feel as though that it's the way to go, that you as a collective say, okay, let's have a close look at this and see what we can do. So I'm disappointed that Grafton's not into, sort of half growing up there and half growing up in the far north coast. But I really respect the fact that this is an association choice. We don't have the right to tell you that you have to do things. We can only provide hopefully a structure which is going to improve your business.
I just think they want more answers, and I believe in 12 months you'll be able to give that. They felt that it would have been nice to put it in one place first, make it work, or see where the problems are and rectify it. But I think at the moment their merger is high on their agenda and progressing well. And I think for two associations to fight each other over it at the moment is probably not ideal. And I believe in 12 months I'll be in a position to do that and be able to go forward. I do have a concern about the smaller associations like your Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbours. Where do they stand in this program that will help them when we're saying to them they're not an association anymore? Where does that leave them in being able to go forward and be progressive like we all want to be as well? It just feels a little bit like they're under the table a little bit.
No, I know you're talking about Bruce, and I respect that, but I don't see them, or those associations that are small, being disadvantaged in any way. So, if I could ask you a question, where do you feel as though, and maybe this is unfair to ask you, where do you feel as though Coffs Harbour will be this time next year in relation to?
Because I think still, in the country areas, you've still got to have your country areas working. And it doesn't mean just because Grafton's working that we don't worry about Coffs Harbour. We've had Coffs Harbour paying us in our association. So we're about in talks with Far North Coast at the moment about playing with them. You don't have those same issues in the Sydney metropolitan country areas.
So let's take Coffs Harbour. It's a really good example because it's something that I've been trying to get out there. So you take Coffs, where realistically, if they were to become part of the Grafton Association, it's just a hypothetical, I don't know, I'm not involved in association before, but if they were, to me, exactly the same as Far North Coast, because that's obviously in my region. You've got different towns and different clubs scattered around the place that all benefit from the RCC and the RCC network contribution of what that person's doing. I don't see any difference, because then if Coffs Harbour were hypothetically part of the Grafton Association, they would then have a representation on that association, so therefore they would be getting the same opportunity as every other club or associate of that association. Would you agree?
I'm Debbie Gorman, I'm from Hockey Coffs Coast, which is Coffs Harbour. As Bruce said, we're neighbours and we all care about each other and work and have done together for many years. I had a few questions as well too. I think the RCC program looks like a really good concept. However, by association, or as we are at the moment, but may not be in the future because we don't have the numbers. Although we have 420 members, that's not 500. So it comes up later in the next segment, obviously. That was the cost for us. That was one of the factors, and also the geographical area. Like I see that the Far North Coast zone or area, whatever you like to call it, number one that came up on the screen before, it's a part-time role. I'm assuming it would take in Far North Coast, Grafton, Coffs Harbour, Port Macquarie, all those types of areas. I'm not sure of that though.
No. Now, to answer your first question, you could afford to be in the you could afford to be in the RCC. I did some research yesterday on Coffs Harbour, and what you contribute to your current GDO would have entitled you to around about 18% of an RCC in your area. So what you currently contribute, if you wanted to contribute that to the RCC, would have given you around about 18% contribution to a region, which would have been Grafton, Far North Coast and Coffs Harbour.
That was another question I was going to ask. If an association did want to get involved, the close-off was the 25th of October. Is there still any scope there for an association to become involved for next year, or is that all done and dusted?
The close-off was the 12th of November, and for 2014, that's where it sits.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
That's
But in saying that, I'll talk to you later about the challenges that you've got in relation to your program coming up in February, because I've been able to get a mechanism to be able to get expertise to gain development part of your association that you've been dealing with, Gina, and I'll talk to you about that later.
Yeah, we have been. Thanks, Lauren.
Right, I'm just mindful of time because I just want to get up and have a few words on the association as well. So are there any last minute questions? Got a couple?
Lynn from Grafton Workers. You spoke a lot about player development, which is fine, I understand that, but I'm interested in what you're going to bring on the umpire official development, because part of your criteria is level 2 coaching. What criteria are they going to have put on them, and what are they going to bring for the umpire development in regions?
Absolutely. As I've spoken about numerous times, I feel as though I agree with Greg on this. The officials, which I include the umpires in, is just important as developing the coaches. So therefore, with the quality of the quality of the coach that we're attracting to these positions, if they don't have accreditation in the areas that we need them to have, number one, they'll be required to get them, and secondly, we've also got a mechanism to be able to make sure that the RCC is, let's say, organising the personnel for us to be able to have somebody there, such as Gina, to be able to run those umpiring development programs within inside the region, or within inside the association, I should say.
Okay, so then like the practical side of it as well. I mean, because we don't have like the standard of games, we can get them to a certain level, and then the standard of games obviously need to increase. So there's still, I guess, a lot of trouble involved there if people don't want to do that side of it.
I think one of the challenges we have is that in association land, we can get people up to level 1, and I think level 2, exactly the same as myself. I mean, if I want to go above that and get to level 3 or advanced coaching level 4, which I need to go externally to be able to do that. And obviously, from an association point of view, we would love to be able to get people to level 3. I would think to be realistic, there wouldn't be a large number of people that would get there. But I know that looking around here in different associations, I can tell you within inside your association, people that are level 3. And we need to be able to provide a stepping stone. At the moment, one of the difficulties that I feel as though that we actually have is that prior to this year, we only getting people level 1. So, my focus has been very much on building a house, and that's get the foundation right, with as many level 1s out there as we can this year, to continue the education next year, focus on those as well as new recruits getting level 2s, and then be able to make sure that we're progressing. And I've got a very selfish point of view on this, apart from assisting the association. I mean, what I really want is I want officials and I want coaches to be able to be more highly accredited and have a better skill base. That have a major impact on our junior coaching state sides and also our open state sides. 2 years ago, when I was on the High Performance Committee and not an employee of Hockey New South Wales, we sat around the table, about 10 people, trying to find coaches to coach our junior state sides. When I embarked on this process of being able to develop coaches, when we sit around the table again, which was last week, the volume and quality of people that we've got to put into those positions this year, I think has never, ever been seen before in Hockey New South Wales. And the only reason that's occurred is because there's been a purposeful approach to be able to make sure that, number one, we identify people, we bring them back into the sport, and we make sure that we're developing those people so therefore they've got the degree of confidence and desire to be able to make sure that they can make a further contribution.
One more question for Wally. Sorry. No, you can go.
There you are.
I was just going back, so all the progression, like, I was talking about like your umpiring levels and moving through the levels for umpires. So that's all going to come under the RCC.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Larry, this first part of the question's for you. What does New South Wales deem as a successful championship at state, national level? So top three sides go away.
Our
Top three, but we have...
Top three, but our chart that came out with the information only covered first position.
Yeah, well, that's the correlation we're making. Wally, I mean, I've known you for a long time. You know that we're very, very successful at the junior level. And I know we've had this conversation over a couple of years, so I know what game we're playing. But the bottom line is that we're not comparing, third places with third places. We're comparing first places with first places. And yeah, look, I am selfish about it. I don't want to come second at the AHL. I mean, I have got an egotistical approach to helping New South Wales success. I feel as though that we produce, well, I don't feel as though I know that we produce 1/3 of Australian hockey players in New South Wales. And at the moment, at the elite level, we're not getting those results. May not be anybody's fault, it may be the process. We have to change the process. If we do the same today as what we've done yesterday, we're going to have to rely on luck. I don't feel comfortable going into a gold medal game and at the games relying on luck. I need to have a plan, and I need to have good players on the field to be able to make sure we can do it.
My next question is, you've got the RCC, you've got the developer camps, you've got the HP camps now, you've got the AAP. It's all linked together, but from an association point of view, and a lot of the questions that I get is how does it all link together? Because the costings for all of this all have an influence on people playing the game. So if the RCC people are putting in, associations are putting in a set amount of money, but so is every player in that they're putting money in through their registration.
Yeah,
and we've got the development camps that are costing so much money, and the AAP, which is the same. So it comes back to that we haven't seen a full structure yet, how it ties together, because we're changing the selection criteria and policies and things like that, and yet I've got people asking me, how does this match with this? Okay, don't know.
Yep, that's a very fair question, Wally. I'll give you that one. Well, what the plan's about in simplistic terms is trying to take away the expense that parents don't count. And the expense that parents don't count is every time they take their young sibling to a Hockey New South Wales function, that they normally count the cost in relation to the nomination fee. They don't tend to count the cost openly as far as the time off work, the plane flight or the fuel. They don't account for the accommodation that they've had provided for themselves. So therefore, I feel as though, with the studies that I've done, that the cost to the consumer being the parent, I feel as though that's where we need to target. So part of our strategic plan is very, very simple. It's not rocket science. It's about providing a high degree of expertise in the regions. So that every time that your child needs to attend something which is going to develop them as an athlete and as a person, that they don't have to jump on a plane from Grafton, or they don't have to drive up from Wagga, or they don't have to come across the Blue Mountains from Lithgow. It's about providing that resource in the home environment. Will we get it all right? No, probably not. But I've never gone into anything feeling frightened. You know, you go into the plan, you go in and you look, identify where you're at now, where you want to get to, and the obstacles that are in your way. Some of those obstacles are divided opinion, some of those obstacles are criticism. And let me tell you, I mean, you need to answer those challenges if you want to be able to make sure that you can make a significant difference. So, like being a parent, sometimes we put these things into place. It's not a popularity contest. But we do things as parents because we know it's right. Because we know that at the end of the day, that person hopefully will grow up respecting that you've made the right decision. I don't see it being too much different from this.
All right, thanks everyone.